Welcome back to my channel. And if you are visiting my channel for the first time, you're also highly welcome. In this space, we simplify anatomy, and here we learn anatomy with so much fun. In this lecture, we would be looking at blood. Here, we'll be looking at the different structural components of blood, and this is where we'll be highlighting the cellular component and also the extracellular component. We'll also be giving some details that you should know as students of anatomy. Blood is classified as a connective tissue. It is specifically classified as a specialized connective tissue. If we go back to my lecture on connective tissue, we already described in that lecture that we have some specialized type of connective tissue. We listed bone, blood, and also cartilage. I've put up lectures on bone and cartilage. You can go and check that lectures up to keep yourself updated. But for the purpose of this class, we would be focusing on blood, which is a specialized type of connective tissue too, but it is specifically classified as a liquefied type of specialized connective tissue. And it is liquefied indeed, going to its structural orientation. Blood is pumped by the heart and it is directed into the blood vessels. It is through these blood vessels that it's able to circulate, and this is where it supplies oxygen and nutrients to the different organs in the body. Let's look at the functions of blood. Blood supplies oxygen, hormones, nutrients, and other important substances to the different organs in the body. It is through blood that oxygen molecules will run through to supply the different cellular components of the different organs in the body for their own metabolic activities. It is also seen to create the means through which hormones run through the different target sites after the release from the glands. Also, nutrients are able to reach the different organs in the body through the blood. It is also through blood that removal of waste also occurs, because blood creates the medium through which waste also runs before they are finally released out of the body. It is also seen to help prevent diseases and also infection. There is a particular cell in blood which will be unfolding as we go through with this lecture that is responsible for immune function. So it is also seen to exert the function of protecting the body against infection and also diseases. It also creates the means through which temperature is maintained, and it does this through vasodilation. When it occurs, there is vasodilation, which leads to the expansion of the wall of the vessels, and this increases the volume of blood that passes through this region. And running under the surface of the skin, the heat will be released, and this is how it helps to control or maintain temperature when the situation arises. Blood also exerts the function of blood clotting and also coagulation. Bleeding occurs, there is a specific component of blood that enhances this process. And this is where blood itself is preventing its own loss when bleeding occurs. We would also be dwelling more on this as we go through with this lecture. So the different functions that we have highlighted here are attributed to the different structural components of blood. So by the time we highlight the structural component of blood, we would be relating each of these functions as we have highlighted when we get to that particular region or section of this lecture. So now let's dive into the structural component of blood. What is blood made up of? Blood is made up of the cellular component and also the extracellular component. So this is where we have the cellular component of blood, and these are made up of the red blood cells, the white blood cells, and also the platelets. So these are the three structural cellular components of blood. These cells are mobile. They are suspended in a fluid medium that allows this movement. And the second structural component is the extracellular matrix. This extracellular matrix is solely made up of the plasma. The plasma is the liquid component of blood, and this is what makes up the ground substance. It is onto this ground substance that we have the cellular component then suspended in. And this is what makes blood present a liquid form because of the plasma component. This plasma component is also made up of a high percentage of water. We'll also be unfolding this as we go through with this lecture. If a volume of blood is taken into this container, This level that is demarcated at this upper region is where we have the light component of blood, which is the liquid component of blood, and this will be suspended at the upper region. This is basically the plasma content of blood, and this makes about 55% of blood component. So you see that a larger percentage of blood itself is made up of the plasma content, and this is what is seen in the upper region. While the cellular component, which appears to be heavier, is what is seen in this lower region. And this takes about 45% of blood. So this is what will be seen in the lower portion. So this cellular component will also be further subdivided. We have a segment that will be located at this point, and this takes about less than 1% of the entire volume of blood. And this is where we see the white blood cells and also the platelets. So the white blood cells and the platelets are seen at the upper region of the cellular layer of blood, while the red blood cells, which takes the chunk of the cellular component, is seen at the lower region. So you have about 44% of the cellular component as the red blood cells, which means that the red blood cells take the chunk of the cellular component of blood. This is what is projected here in this image. We will be taking each of the cellular components one after the other to see their structural orientation, and also using that to relate to the functions that they exhibit. So first, let's look at the erythrocytes. The erythrocyte is also referred to as the red blood cell. This is the most abundant cell type in blood. It is seen to contain hemoglobin, and hemoglobin is a protein that is responsible for carrying oxygen, which means that the sole function of red blood cell is the transportation of oxygen. And it does this because of its hemoglobin content. If you look at this image by the side, this is the blood vessel. And within the blood vessel, we say we have the number of red blood cells, which is also referred to as the erythrocyte. And this is what is carried here at this point. The erythrocyte is a biconcave disc, and this is the structural orientation of the erythrocyte, called the red blood cell. They have an indentation at this central region. And this indentation is so created to increase the surface area of the red blood cell, so as to increase the capacity of carrying the oxygen molecules that it is designed for. So this is the kind of presentation that it has. And this cell is seen to lack nucleus. The absence of nucleus within the red blood cell is to also create more space within the cytoplasm, so as to create more space for the accommodation of the hemoglobin, so that more oxygen molecules will also be transported. So we can see that the morphology of the cell is in a way complementing to the function that they exhibit. The erythrocytes also do not divide. They become replaced by the red bone marrow. In the red bone marrow, we have the process of hematopoiesis occurring specifically in the production of the red blood cell. It is referred to as the erythropoiesis in the production of the red blood cell. And this is where they are continuously being replaced within the bloodstream. So they do not divide, but are replaced continuously by this process that occurs within the red bone marrow. The second cell type that we have in blood is the leukocytes. The leukocytes is also referred to as the white blood cell. So using this image by the side, this is where we have the white blood cell here highlighted in white. These cells are seen to have nucleus when compared with the erythrocyte that lacks nucleus. And the white blood cell is responsible for defense mechanisms. We have two types of white blood cells. We have the granulocytes and we have the agranulocytes. The basis for this subdivision is as a result of the deposits of granules. So the white blood cell that are seen with granular deposits are referred to as granulocytes, while the white blood cells that do not have the deposits of granules are referred to as agranulocytes. Under the granulocytes, we have the neutrophils. The neutrophils basically are responsible for trapping microorganisms. We also have the eosinophils that target worms, and the basophils that are responsible for creating alarm for the surrounding white blood cell. We also have the agranulocytes, and these include the monocytes that will become transformed into the macrophages. These are responsible for engulfing microorganisms through phagocytic reactions, and also the lymphocytes that utilizes antigen-antibody responses in creating immune response. So we see that we have different types of leukocytes based on the deposits of granules. Then we have the thrombocytes. The thrombocytes are also referred to as the platelets. Using this image by the side, this is where we have the thrombocytes here, arrowed at this point. These are small cells, and the exact blood clotting function, this is where they are helping to prevent blood loss during bleeding. So we see that we have different types of cells, of course, embedded or suspended within the blood plasma, which is the liquid contents of blood. So now let's look at the extracellular matrix. The extracellular matrix of blood is the structural component that is seen outside the cellular environment. We've tried to describe the cellular component in our previous slide, where we highlighted the red blood cell, the white blood cell, and also the platelets. These cells are suspended in the liquid plasma that is referred to as the ground substance. So the plasma is the ground substance, and it is onto the ground substance that the cellular components are embedded in. The plasma is made up of about 90 to 92% of water, and this is why we see that it exists in a liquid form. It is also seen to contain proteins. The major proteins that are seen in blood plasma include the albumins. Albumins basically is responsible for transporting lipid-soluble substances. We know that there are some substances that are not soluble in water, and they are needed to be transported through the blood plasma. It is the albumins that create the means onto which this type of molecules are transported. The albumins are also responsible for maintaining osmotic pressure in the blood. And they do this by controlling the loss and absorption of water components of the blood plasma. We also have the globulins. The globulins basically are responsible for immune function. Remember in our previous slide, when we highlighted the different cellular components, we said that the white blood cells are responsible for immune function. We also have a component of protein embedded or suspended within the blood plasma that also contribute or assist in this process. We also have the fibrinogens. These fibrinogens basically support blood clotting process. During coagulation of blood, when bleeding occurs, we have fibrinogens deposited also around this region in helping to assist in the process of coagulation. So you see that we have different proteins in blood plasma that are also contributing to the functions of the other cellular components of blood. Also within the blood plasma, we have salt, we have calcium salt, sodium salt, and other types of salt. We also have hormones, nutrients, and also gases. So you have different structures or substances embedded within the blood plasma. But at this point, it is important for us to know that 90 to 92% of the entire blood plasma component is made up of water. And this is why it exists in a liquid form. And this is why we say that blood is a liquefied type of connective tissue. The plasma is acting as the ground substance, and it is onto the plasma that the different cells are then embedded in. So this is the entire structural configuration of blood. And also because it is liquefied, the blood cells are also suspended in heat. It is able to allow for the movement of these cells. So let's look at clinical anatomy. Blood can be classified into groups, and this is based on the different types of antigens that are located on the plasma membrane of the red blood cell. So it depends on the types of antigens that we have. This will be used to establish the blood group in this case. So we can have blood group A, we can have blood group B, we can have AB, we can also have O. This is as a result of the type of antigen that is seen on the plasma membrane of the red blood cell. So if we have A antigen, it means that this blood group will be a blood group A, and if you have B antigen, it means it is going to be a blood group B. For blood group AB, means they have antigens A and B, while blood group O are not seen to carry any antigen. So it depends on the antigens that they have. This will be used to establish the blood group that they belong to. So it means that blood group A can receive from another blood group A because they have the same antigen on their plasma membrane, and also blood group B can also receive from another individual with blood group B because they also have the same antigen on their plasma membrane. Blood group AB is a universal recipient because they have the antigen AB, which means that they can receive from blood group A and blood group B because they have A and B antigens on their plasma membrane. While blood group O is a universal donor because it is not seen to have specific antigens on the plasma membrane of each red blood cell. This means that it can donate to all the other blood groups. So this is the basis onto which the different blood groups are classified, and also the basis onto which different individuals can also receive blood from the other. It is also important for us to highlight the resource factor. This resource factor is also an important factor that is needed to be considered in blood group. We could have resource positive or resource negative, which means that the blood groups that we have initially described could be resource positive or negative. So we could have blood group A resource positive or blood group A resource negative. And this is how we have for the other blood groups too. And this is important, especially during pregnancy, because during pregnancy, if the mother is resource positive and the fetus is resource negative, there would be counter-reaction. Because when the blood from the mother and the fetus meet, there's going to be resource factor incompatibility. And this can be life-threatening. So thanks for watching this video. Please stay tuned to this channel.